Good afternoon. We're here outside Leinster House with the Wards for Court Discharge Action Group, trying to highlight the case and a whole series of problems and discriminations that are taking place against them as families and against people with special needs. We're here in the company of Pat Buckley TD and a few people who are involved in the campaign. So could I get you to say why you're here and just introduce yourselves if you might? Anton?
Yeah, it's Mish Anton Lucra. So my name is Anton Lucra, and I'm here to essentially highlight the fact that disability yet again has been neglected by our government and has been over a number of years. And essentially the issues we want to highlight is the fact that during the drafting of the legislation and the enactment of the legislation that families weren't consulted. And the other galling omission that we find with the legislation is that it does not comply with the UN Convention on Disability, specifically in relation to the fact that people, if they want to make a complaint, cannot do so because our government hasn't ratified the optional protocol, which would afford people that right.
That was before the Dáil in 2018, Pat, this optional protocol, and hasn't been touched since, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's definitely one of my bugbears. It was Cregan O'Quillan had beat that drum for a long time. I was in the chamber that night when they passed the rest of it, but and I was speaking to these people today. I think the optional protocol is the D-Star prize, as I call it here. We need to ratify that, but what I fear is this government and past governments are basically terrified of it, because if they do ratify this, there is, well, I suppose it's opening Pandora's box, because number one, the government won't have the capability to provide what should be there, and this is the worst thing about it. Third-class citizens, anybody with a disability is a third-class citizen, and it's absolutely disgusting how people are treated. And again, based on means and not your needs, when it should be based on
It's down to money, Pat, which is horrible. So the most vulnerable people are becoming the victims of what's supposed to be a shortage of money, which I don't accept for 1 minute. Mary, you've been ploughing the same furrow here. What do you think here today? What would you like to see happen?
Well, we started off in 2008 campaigning about the injustices regarding the funds and losses that Wards Court sustained at that time, and that hasn't been resolved. So we started off with that. Then in 2022, we had this the drafting of the legislation and the amendments to the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act, or the Amendments Act 22 now. And that was going on all year, but we had absolutely no consultation taking place at all, not with any of us. And many of us tried to engage with many of the ministers and others, and they failed to respond to us. And we were shut out, and we had no say in anything. That goes entirely against the word and the spirit, the wording and the spirit and the terms of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Convention states that these people must be consulted, and those who are representing them must be consulted, and that did not happen. And following on from that, then there was a lack of information and support, and then wards or families of wards who were committee acting on their behalf began to receive letters from the Office of Wards of Court telling them this was about to take place. And from then on, the newer group came together trying to sort out what was going on, and we all have the same problems with all of these things. And nothing has changed, and nobody is listening. We write, it's ignored. There's absolutely no action. We need the ministers. There are 3 ministers involved. We need the ministers, the Office of Wards of Court, and the Decision Support Service to get together, to get their act together, to come in, talk to us, find out what's going on for us, and why there are still 2,000 wards in the system who haven't been discharged. And the legal fraternity and the judges, Judge Barneville, the President of the High Court, and Mr. Judge O'Connor of the Circuit Court in Dublin, they're very concerned about the numbers still so high in wardship, and they're not discharging, and not discharging at the rate they should be. And they want to know why. Well, if they speak to us, we can tell them why.
Very good. Thank you, Mary.
We're just here basically to protest about the way this has been set up, but also the fact that the government feel that they can spend millions on other groups to oversee this instead of actually consulting the people whose lives this actually affects. So we want to know where the money is. Where is it all gone? Why come my child's been without services for 8 years. There's offices here in Dublin who are claiming to have treated them who haven't treated them. I could name a few on air, but I won't. And then we have a group, an assisted decision-making body who won't actually contact us, who is in no contact with us. The first contact we have is when our child or the relative goes through this process. And these people are being paid huge amounts of money to do the job we're already doing. And carers can't even, I'm not on carers. I don't get carers. So, I'm just wondering how this person is going to earn their wage trying to help me deal with my child when they actually have no experience, no qualifications, and no more importantly, living experience of somebody with a disability. You could have all the qualifications in the world, but unless you have a sibling or a child or a parent that this affects, you haven't got a clue. You haven't. And I think education goes a long way, but not as far enough as to be able to identify with people. And I think the government is failing these children and failing these people, anyone with a disability in Ireland. They're not a citizen the same as anybody else. And that needs to change.
Yes, it does. And you being a carer in that role, you have rights, but also the individual who have the disability, they have rights as well. They are citizens, and there's endless legislation which says that they have rights, and they're being utterly neglected.
They're not even being neglected. We're being, the worst thing that can happen to parents of children or anyone who's minding somebody with a disability is misinformation. And this government thrives on misinformation. And there is nothing more worse than no information is disinformation and misinformation, because they have you running around. Even with the respite grant, if you get the domiciliary care allowance, you're supposed to get that respite grant until that person is died, like they have a disability. They take you off respite grant when they stop domiciliary grant, even though you're entitled to it for the rest of that person's life. Why are they doing that? That creates even more paperwork. Are we not caring for the environment either? Do you know what I mean? Like, they can't have it all ways. They want us filling in forms 24/7. I have had to fill in about 60 pages of paperwork over the last few weeks. My child doesn't even have a medical card.
Is your experience of our state that it cares for people who are vulnerable?
No.
Okay, I agree with you.
No.
I just want to see if this talk to Dála might. But earlier on we were chatting kind of informally, and you had suggested maybe an immediate way forward, not necessarily a solution, but an immediate forward.
There's a Dáil Petitions Committee, and I call it the lastchance.com for every citizen. I mean, but I think every citizen, whether you agree or disagree, deserves to be heard. And I think that we give these people a massive chance to come in, tell their story, get it on the record. That committee has the power to ask ministers or government departments, whoever is responsible, to come in and answer the questions that she put to us. And I would certainly urge anybody, and I'll let you know, one signature is all you need in that committee, not 100,000. One signature is enough to get you in there. And to me, it's a very powerful committee. It's very non-political. But I've seen some amazing results come from it. And it's probably one time when you're in politics and you say, you know what, I'm proud to be part of that committee.
Well, Pat, I'm happy to have met you. I think the group here are happy, and that's a worthwhile suggestion to pursue. We wanted to come in
again.
again.
Can I just say one thing? Just for anybody in this country who has a child with a disability, your children are protected by the EU and UN regulations. And if Ireland isn't doing the job, then we can sue. We can gather together and sue the EU, and bring it to the UN. We have rights, and the Irish government thinks we don't know them. And unfortunately, because they've been messing us around so long, we've all become not just carers, lawyers, doctors and surgeons to our children and teachers. And we all are very aware of the law. And we will absolutely take Ireland to the EU and the UN if they don't start fucking up.
Go for it.
Yeah.
There are tens of thousands of families where there are special needs in them that are being utterly neglected, and perhaps worse than neglected, they're being deceived by our own state. This is not the policy.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can I lead this letters, please? I'm from Discharge for Ward Support Group.
Discharge for
Ward Support Group. Okay. So on behalf of the Ward Support, and we're dropping these into the Minister for Justice, that's Helen McEntee, Minister for Children, Roderick Gorman, and Anne Rabatini, Minister for State. We really would appreciate it.
We do. His name. I was just whacking Celtic to see his name. And Anne Rabbit. I will make sure they get those.
Great. Good
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Take care.
Okay. Now, delivered. Not much more you can do now, and let's see what the reply shall be.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Will you mean Margaret? Will it be correct?
I'll be correct, yeah.